is the purpose of the HQDA? HQDA is intended to provide plans, policy, strategic integration, and resourcing. That is the purpose of your HQDA. Therefore, it kind of made sense that OACH, since we are operating within HQDA, should mirror that. So the redesigned OACH will consist of those organizations with those functions. There will be an organization that does strategic plans. There will be one that does strategic policy. One that does strategic integration. You kind of get in the drift here. And strategic resourcing. Connecting with those other functions within HQDA. And all other operational aspects of religious support will be divested down into the Institute, or in your papers it may say USA Earl. I like the word Institute a little better. The Institute is going to be separated into two different elements. One is the Religious Support Operations Center, RSOC. Within the RSOC, there's going to be these functions. Personnel. It's Chaplain Corps specific. The recruiting and endorser relations. Strong Bonds program, as well as CTOF management. Our CDID will reside there, as well as our FFID, our PPOE, which is the proponent, the enlisted proponent section, as well as an ops and initiatives group. These are the functions that are operational, that are providing oversight, as well as program and leading the efforts of making religious support happen throughout the Army. Combined with now the Chaplain Corps Religious Leader Academy, the RLA, who will continue providing the great training and education that we have grown to appreciate and need. Now, in the very far part, you're going to see the CPE and family life. In the near future, those elements will also be pulled into the RLA, providing that extra capability to the training and education that's happening there. And in time, that capability will be able to be also undergird all the operational aspects that's happening in the RSOC. Now the so what? Why are we doing all this? Okay. Or what can you take away from this? Pretty simply put, OACH is being transformed into those four different areas: plans, policy, integration, and resourcing at the strategic level. And in order to meet ARI, the requirements, point number 2, is that the OACH operational functions are going to be divested, moved out of the building, into the Institute for Religious Leadership. Again, it's a single institute, a single institution, with two separate organizations. Chaplain Corps RSOC, Religious Support Operations Center, as well as the RLA, the Chaplain Corps Religious Leadership Academy. Now, the USA Earl, or the Institute, will achieve that unity of effort that we've needed through that 07 leadership. The Institute will also ensure a synchronized proponent training and education by rank and responsibility that provides that branch certification with the aim at moving us toward ensuring that we have that strategic leader icon fully invested in the development of our chaplains and religious affairs specialists. And last but not least, our RSOC will enhance the integration of all those operational functions of the Chief of Chaplain's proponency. When they're all there, all rowing in the same direction, under the guidance of the Chief of Chaplains. Now, here's some things that I would ask of you. Is it clear enough in your minds of where we're moving toward? Is there enough clarity here that it makes sense? Are there things in, if this is our talking points, if you will, did we miss anything in communicating this internally? And one last question is, do you perceive within your different commands any issues that, again, that there's going to be a concern or a challenge because of? And with that, sir, I'll leave it up to you for discussion.
Thanks, Billy. That was a lot to digest. But since we all did VTM through it, we're digesting it. So what are your thoughts on that? Do we have clarity? Are those good takeaway or talking point for the Chaplain Corps? As you look at that, did you think of applying this to your command? Where might your commander have concerns or need greater clarity? What do you think? Any of that?
Some folks here may not know about where the key locations, just the big rocks, where like Air Force Space, possibly Navy Space, just some of the big rocks right off some of the folks.
The question was just location and space for this thing called the user or the institute. What was formerly known as the Armed Forces Chaplain Center, which was currently USAC's, and next door we had the Air Force and Navy. We've already attained the Air Force space, and we are in negotiations currently to also get the Navy aspect. Therefore, the intent is that we have an entire campus for religious support for the Institute, so that the Academy is happening simultaneously as the RSOC under the Institute, ensuring this is all moving in the same direction, in the same place, so that integration is happening. Therefore, it just takes a walk across the courtyard for coordination. That's the intent. Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and ask the question. So, Chaplain Wake from CAC. I actually understand the bar line chart. I appreciate that, and your laydown was very good. My question is, from TRADOC perspective, I won't speak for James. So is the idea that what is currently in TRADOC will stay in TRADOC, and the FOA will stand up and oversee the RSOC? Can you tell me, because I see the colored boxes, I get that's a personnel move, but structurally, who works for whom, and if it's all under the FOA, is that a whole new organization and taking it way out of TRADOC, or how do we see those pieces moving?
This is going to be a truly unique organization, and anyone who works in TRADOC is probably going to be even, you'll understand it more than some of us who are not. TRADOC is going to remain TRADOC.
Okay.
Because again, in our history lesson, there are things that TRADOC provides that we want to retain. Systems, standards, absolutely. But we also want to have that operational aspect coming together with that. Now, there's some eaches that gets down into there where I don't want to bore you with those. And you look at the color coding, I don't mean that to confuse anyone, because that's kind of a current status of where we're getting to.
Thanks.
But it's intentional, if you notice at the very top of that the Chief of Chaplains ultimately is the lead for the Institute. However, we're going to have an 07 lead that on the chief's behalf.
Billy,
Sure.
on that note, not to bust anybody out, but just you all asked, and it's the first time looking at this particular line of block chart, it might be a recommendation that the dotted line between the chief of chaplain's 08 on the right, that's duplicated, but others that aren't familiar with our branch might read that as a coordinating relationship or something
I see.
between two 08s. One's named force monitors. You might want to make a solid line just to the chief on the left for others reading this chart. Might be a little complicated.
I appreciate that, and you're right. We want to add clarity, not create confusion. Especially when we start talking external audiences.
Yeah, point being, we only have one 08.
We only have one.
chief.
He talks to himself.
Yeah, the coordinating relationship.
Any other discussion points? Ma'am?
Could you talk a little bit on that same vein of not wanting to create confusion, but we're changing the names in director? Could you talk a little bit about why the decision to drop Commandant and go to director?
Again, this is a unique organization, unlike anything else in the Army. And a part of that discussion is that if you're in TRADOC world, Commandant has connotations and understanding. And we discussed, do we want to retain that, or do we want to communicate something different? And the decision made that we want to communicate something different. That the 07 is the director of the whole institute, meaning that there are still responsibilities for that 07 to TRADOC for the academy, but also that 07 has responsibilities for the RSOC. So in a TRADOC mind, we wanted them to understand that we have this 07, but it's unlike what we've had in the past as far as a commandant. That it's a director over the whole thing, not just the school, or, as we're getting to, the academy. Fair enough, ma'am?
Hey, Billy, on that one, if I can, and I won't diverge too far, just want everybody to be clear in one offering of opinion is I don't think there is a branch proponent, so the other title that they wear, I don't think there is a branch proponent in the Army, be it a special staff branch or any other line branch, so to speak, that is anything other than commandant. So as long as the team's clear in what we're choosing, we are going to be totally unique in that we will have a branch proponent that wears the title of director that is different than anything else in any other branch in the Army. So that is not the language of the Army for branch proponent.
We acknowledge that and even discussed that, understanding that we are communicating something to the Army that is unique, knowing that it doesn't exist anywhere else, and we're willing to
Assume risk.
Assume the risk.
The risk to anybody.
and to address it accordingly.
Thanks, Jeff. That's an excellent point. Whereas in 45, we put all the eggs in the basket of the field operating agency. And then whereas in 73, we put all the eggs in the basket in TRADOC. Here, we're trying to split the difference and get the critical functions of both, but lest we subordinate the head of the RSOC inside of the TRADOC system, therefore making more complicated unity of effort for operational religious support. The Chief of Chaplain's decision was to retain, you can see they're in brown, they're not going to wear the TRADOC patch. To have a different patch. That patch will be the Field Operating Agency patch, which will have its own UIC, different from the Academy. You're absolutely right.
And you all are tracking, again, just for clarity's sake, on a fine point, but I appreciate the audience, just so we're all sure, as we pull the trigger on, that there are others, in the case of JAG, who are non-TRADOC, AMES who are non-trade-off, but their branch proponents are still common owners, even though they're not in trade-off.
Exactly. They're not in trade-off, and what makes it more complicated is that we're retaining in trade-off. We're simultaneously in trade-off and not in trade-off. So it would, because with the trade-off, we have the trade-off element, using the commandant nomenclature would be more difficult for us than if we were fully out of trade-off and used it. Yeah, we're tracking. You're absolutely right.
So the key is the proponency of the branch is why this, getting this clear.
Exactly.
Not the intersection.
Yep.
Can you speak to the naming convention of academy versus school customs?
There's multiple thoughts that went into moving away from, again, the school, because it's what we're accustomed to. Academy, we want to move in the direction of not just a training, but an education. If we're going to get toward the strategic leader icon, we're going to have to, by rank and responsibility, like we said, is those things are still happening from beginning all the way through. In order to achieve that, we also got to almost rethink and adding to what the school is doing and make it into an academy where we can have maybe some expectation change, if you want to call it that, raising the level, how do I put it that way? An academy is just that we can add into it the educational element that will raise the bar, if you will. Absolutely. Absolutely. The great part is if, as we move forward, that's why we have the Ops and Initiative, as they're trialing ideas and they find that this works, perhaps it is a strategic education initiative. They say, this is fantastic. We need to standardize this. Slide it right over to the academy and say, okay, how do we make this work Army-wide and retain it? Taking an initiative, again, that's that unity of effort that now becomes, in the academy, a course that goes through all the wickets that needs to be and is retained in the academy and then executed across the force as needed. That's the intent, that's the vision, to get to the strategic leader icon. So that our young captains that are out there, someday in the great beyond, when we're all graybeards, will have a fantastic education when they're sitting in your seats. That's the, I think, the vision.
I'm not going to have a gray beard, though.
Thank you, ma'am. I stand corrected.
No worries.
I'm seeing, oh, yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that there was going to be a 07 there. Where does the 26 mic fit into all this, and with the numbers? Are we going to draw the numbers? Are they going to be placing any of those positions? Are we going to be expected to do more with what we already have?
Here's the challenge, and I'm going to be honest here. The great thing is I've got a sergeant major in the office that beats me up routinely about ensuring that we have the appropriate level of 56 mites to help all of us chaplains, and I greatly appreciate that. So are we going to be asked to do more with less? It doesn't take much more than reading the newspaper of what the environment is as far as growth, meaning don't do it. So yes, we are being asked to do something like this, and what I've heard whispered and rumored is this is probably the biggest transformation we've had since 1945, that we have to do it with as little growth as possible. So will we have mics? Absolutely. There will be more mics, 56 mics at Oach than we've ever had. we will have them in strategic places throughout RSOC because, well, we need it, without a doubt. And we've worked hard to get that mix of Chaplain to, because in days gone by, if you visited Oach, there weren't very many NCOs working up there. Well, come by and visit now. There's a lot more. Intentionally. Sir?
Could you help me understand the risk we were talking about there that Chaplain Hawkins brought up of the name change of commandant to director? Since we said we were acknowledging risk, I'll admit I don't quite understand it, particularly when other branches have commandant and that means something. Lots of people have a zillion directors. It seems like that might create confusion, but I just want to help make sure I understand the risk we're talking about.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to defer to the experts. How's that? Sir, you
Hey,
want to...
jump back. The bottom line is, we are the only place with which will have a field operating agency and TRADOC side by side. All the locations, which are TRADOC locations, all the locations, which are TRADOC locations, have a commandant which is subordinated to TRADOC. Okay? So, the Chief of Chaplains finds it unhelpful for unity of religious support to subordinate his proponency to a commander, because he is personally responsible for that proponency. Therefore, because of that, the name commandant is problematic because our educational efforts remain inside TRADOC. If they didn't, it wouldn't be. As you can take a look at other special branches, but we are. We're not going all the way to only outside of TRADOC or all the way and only inside TRADOC. We're doing both. So that's the reason.
Is that clear, sir?
Thank you for considering it.
Okay. In order to not totally derail the council, what we hope to do was to bring a common understanding. If we failed in that, then it would either create some more conversation, but if you have some real concerns that you want to address or more questions, we're here all week. And for those folks out in digital world, by all means, you can find me on the global. It's William, and in parentheses, Billy Graham. Easy to find. Any of your questions? One more question.
All right, in an effort to keep us on track, we'll go ahead and transition to the next slide, special topic 8, command chaplain alignment. Chaplain Shaw is going to talk in particular this piece. As you know, we discussed this back in December, and this is a revisiting of it, sir.
Well, thank you. The reason I'm briefing this is because I was the one who briefed it to the Chief of Chaplains. So, we presented to the Chief of Chaplains the AARs and inputs over the 2-year period of having the senior chaplain pilot. We presented the information and the inputs from the December 2018 Chaplain Corps Campaign Plan Council. And the purpose of the presentation was to gain an azimuth check with the Chief of Chaplains before doing deep analysis for courses of action. The question was, what 3 courses of action could he entertain? And how would we even evaluate those courses of action so that he could help him make a decision? What things could be held constant between the courses of action? Because if you have like 12 variables in a course of action, it's really non-accessible. It's too much. So next slide, please. So this is where it boiled down. And I'm going to start in the lower right-hand column. In all the courses of action, the chief of chaplains decided to retain locally decision-making authority to assess, coordinate, and coordinate for patchwear, the deployment of the command chaplain colonel. How are you doing office locations, including possible consolidation? And then not reassignment authority, but making a recommendation to DAPS-PER for 56 Alpha assignment changes. So those are constants. Many of these things were actually formative for previous courses of action. He said, I'm going to hold those as constants. That is, I'm going to roll that decision to the local level. And then he said, now, how will we know which course of action is the right one to pick? He agreed on the evaluation criteria in the upper right. Deliver to the division or the Center of Excellence, CG, the best religious support, advisement, and care. The COA, it protects religious support core structure. In other words, it does not leave it open to significant risk which cannot be mitigated. It enhances RS unity of effort across the installation. It empowers chaplain lieutenant colonels in operational and garrison units to lead. It honors the CG's equities as specified. And it ensures equality of senior opportunity for the two chaplain lieutenant colonels in view. Now, given the constants in the lower right and the evaluation criteria in the upper right, the chief of chaplains agreed that he desired to receive analysis on these three COAs. Number one, the garrison chaplain colonel position becomes the command chaplain. Number two, the garrison chaplain colonel position is dual-hatted as the senior chaplain. Or number three, the garrison chaplain colonel structure becomes division chaplain. So, what does that mean? You can read the eaches, but let me give you the dumbed down version, which is simplified. COA 1 has 3 people. There is an 06 command chaplain, there is an 05 division chaplain, and there's an 05 garrison chaplain. Well, you can read the rest of the stuff there. So there's 3 people. And that captures his initial intent in the pilot. Now COA 2, and we just still have to do the assessments. COA 2 has 2 people. It's almost funny how simple it is if you think about it. To me, it has 2 people. The garrison chaplain is dual-hatted as the senior chaplain. And the division chaplain stays a lieutenant colonel. Now in both of these, their names or their senior chaplain, command chaplain, that's shorthand. Like for COA 1 example, you'd be the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault Fort Campbell command chaplain, just like the CG is, except he's the commanding general. And you call him the CG for short, and you call this guy the command chaplain for short, or this girl, this gal. And there's a different nomenclature, and I won't do the deep dive on why you'd have senior chaplain for the second COA right now, but I'll present then the third COA is that we have structure change. That the 06 chaplain on the division, that's 18 total divisions, and no COEs are involved in the scope here, because that would be the active and the guard. That the 06 becomes the division chaplain. And that would likely mean that the 05 at the division would be an operations chaplain. And the 05 at the garrison would be the garrison chaplain. There is a branch in 3, where you could still be called the command chaplain. This is a branch, and the 05 would still be called the division chaplain, and the 05 at the garrison would be the garrison chaplain. So that's a branch of COA 3. And what this would mean, if you did COA 3, then I'm going to yield the floor, would mean that just as the Secretary of the Army designates who has the GCMCA, General Court Martial Convening Authority at a given installation, it's not necessarily the senior ranking CG, as you know. Even so, the Secretary of the Army would designate who, if you use 3 Alpha, the other branch, who would be the command chaplain. He'd be on the division structure, but he would not be assessed regarding capability against the total for divisions. If you don't know what I mean, I cannot do the force structure class right now. But one third of you should know what I mean. At least one third of you should know what I mean. So that is a helpful thing. That means that the Secretary of the Army would be, just as he designates who has GCMCA at a given installation, he would be designating who the command chaplain is for that installation by position, and it would not be assessed against the capability of the division. There are other ways to handle that, but that's probably the way we handle it in 3 Alpha. Okay, and then you can look at the rating schemes, which are appropriate to each course of action and make sense based on the assumptions and the particularities of each COA. This rolls up what we've learned from the pilot and what people have contributed, but that doesn't mean it's done. It means we're ready to actually begin analysis, to run it through and run it up to the Chief of Chaplains for decision in conjunction with other senior leaders in the Army, if you're needing buy-in, which you likely will. I think that's probably enough. What are your comments or questions? And again, what we're looking for is, are we clear? Do you see something that would be a concern for your commander that we need to be able to factor in the analysis? How about on the chaplain corps, are we clear? Do we have the right? Are we accepting risks that somehow we may have missed? We need to be able to capture that in the analysis as we go forward to the Chief of Chaplains. I know it's a lot. Chaplain Whitlock, you're ready to fire away, it looks like.
Just a question,
Sure.
Chaplain Whitlock, Force Com. On course of action 3, when you say they won't be assessed against, it sounds like it's almost the same as COA 1. It's sitting on somebody else's books, and it's just a designation as division chaplain. Am I misunderstanding?
Yes, there's one distinction, which I clearly didn't provide clarity on. And that is, whereas COA 1 is affected by MOA and policy, and the individual would still reside on the garrison structure documents, but by policy and MOA would serve as the command chaplain. COA 3 would change the structure. Now, there's different ways to get at COA 3, it's just truth in lending. COA 3 changes the structure. COA 1 does not change the structure.
So in COA 3, we're adding an 06 to the division info.
That is correct.
Or some form of document.
That is correct. And that is another 3, you're right, it's like a 3 Bravo where you could put it on the a form like an on TDA. That is another way to go. Yes, it would come onto a divisional document. You're absolutely correct. And there are basically 3 different ways to proceed with COA 3. But yes, the answer is you are right.
Okay, second question, on the criteria that your evaluation criteria, are any of those waivers?
Not yet, but not yet. But I can tell you, the chief of chaplains rank ordered them on the paper. So in other words, I put it up and said, no. But that goes, no, yes. That's most important. So what's on the paper is what he said for rank ordering the COAs, because they're not weighted yet.
Thank you.
Sir?
Sir, my thing with that COA would be, if you put the kernel on the TDA, you put the kernel on the TDA.
Do you mean TDA as in an AUG
I'm
TDA
talking,
versus an MTO?
you put the kernel in the division, assigned to the division, on the document.
Most likely in an MTO,
Yeah,
go ahead.
right, and the info. What's gonna happen probably is the Army's gonna come back, well, hey, you have a colonel, lieutenant colonel, and the major, and they're gonna take the major.
Well, that will be precluded by the way we do it with senior leaders, or we won't follow.
It would probably happen, because it always happens, they've done it many times. Come back and wheel around, and oh, you got too many people there, and you have a colonel.
I got it, we got it. Sorry, Major.
Yep.
Got it. There's 3 different ways to approach the COA 3. But we cannot simply do that and think that that's going to be okay. You're absolutely right. What you have to have, there are 3 ways to do it, and they're all more complicated than COA 1 and 2. And if you just do what you said, that's what will happen. You lose a guy. You'll lose his structure. We have to preclude that. That's a great point. Other folk? Sir?
Are we addressing enlisted grade structure in any of this? Maybe brought this up a bunch of times, but it seems like we're growing a little bit, maybe kind of.
Regimental Sergeant Major, we briefed various courses of action to the Regimental Sergeant Major, and he made a decision that we're going to handle this as only on the 56 Alpha side, and that the E8 that is in the division will essentially be dual hatted as a senior 56 might at the garrison level. Sergeant Major, do you want to comment on that? I'll just say I disagree with that. Well, we're not, okay. No, that decision is made. So, I don't know that it's helpful to disagree with it at this juncture. But I didn't mean that part. So, anyway, yes.
Sir, just a simple question, sir.
You know what? I'm terrified when people say I only have a simple question. That's the beginning of the end.
Sir, I'm learning from you, sir. So the question actually is, I'm not sure the mic is on.
You're on.
Okay, but I don't have to shout. Those colonels positioning at the senior level, either senior command, chaplain, or however we call them.
Previous slide, please. Yes?
Yes, sir. Do they require to have division experience? Or are we expecting any colonel to be fine? Because there will be make huge differences.
Great question. That is a simple question. And the answer is you always have a period of transition regarding personnel and senior leader development. So, setting that aside, we would be moving toward the command chaplain in COA 1, the senior chaplain in COA 2, and the division chaplain in COA 3, all serving as 06s at the division for providing division leadership for the first time, their first assignment as division chaplain. 06. There's transition, so it's not all, it takes a while to get there. I like that question. Sir.
Chaplain Dave Wake. Just a recommendation, though, we did talk about this, and I don't know if there's more data to back it up, but I recommend that we strike the 7 COEs. Again, much of this conversation has
Did
been...
you say 7 courses of action?
COEs, the Centers of Excellence. Okay, because at no Center of Excellence do we have a lieutenant colonel that can fulfill the operations billet as it's structured. as well as, again, we don't have the data from the pilot program for you to do some of the investigation. I just recommend that.
We have little data, but we have some.
And so I just recommend we don't need to worry about that component of it. If it proves fruitful, then we go back and we decide how we want to sort it. But that's pure growth. And at that pilot location, we worked to get that growth. We haven't been able to get it with that CG. So I think that at some point we just have to say, okay, let's just do what we can, and the structures you put out are possible.
Thank you. Okay. Do you see, I'll ask you this, do you have concerns from the commanding general perspective that really need to be assessed and included as we do the analysis for COAs 1, 2, and 3? Put on your GO hat. Do you have, will your CG, will he or she have concerns? Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Regarding these COAs, which we should include in our assessments. Sir?
Yes, sir. Chaplain from the 101st.
There's all.
With COA 3, my question goes towards doctrine, because the 06 on the garrison side, part of what they do is at time of war, we may have 2 divisions go through Fort Campbell to be deployed in 3 brigades. And that 06 on the garrison side is the leadership needed to train, equip, and push those forward as a projection force.
Yes.
So if you bring that colonel over to the division side, you lose that capability. What do we do in that case? How are we replicating that?
He would, the division, that division chaplain, he or she would still be responsible for that training. The Title 10.
He'd be gone. He would have deployed with the 101st, so when the 25th comes in.
Okay, first of all, it depends on which of the branches we ended up with as the COA 3. But the chief of chaplains has said that he trusts the local leadership, that's the commanding general, in concert with his senior most chaplain, who would be that 06 billet, to make the right decision. And so he encourages, by the way, he has said to me, when I brief this, please, beseech, he did not use that word, I use it, beseech the 06 chaplains, if you're in this kind of a situation right now, or maybe in the future, to do the real assessment. You know what a UEX is? Okay, UEY? A UEX is, what is UEX? Where's Chaplain Cantrell? What do you got, about 445 people? But then what a UEX is? That's a divisional headquarters. And we really aren't deploying, it's very rare that you take the whole division. So really think, where do you need to weight your religious support effort? And almost always it's on the installation. So he says, let's do the right assessment. Sure.
Chaplain Whitlock, Force.com again. A couple things. Putting on my CG's hat.
Good, thank you.
Primary concern will be growth in the division. Right now, we're in a no growth era, and any growth in the division will cause my commander concern.
Thank you.
Secondly, currently we are not deploying entire division headquarters for the most part. That will change in a peer-to-peer fight. We will deploy entire divisions and multiple divisions simultaneously in a peer-to-peer. So just those 2 things.
Excellent. Thank you. We got it. Thanks, Bob. Other comments, either from your Chaplain Corps hat or your CG's hat, or clarity? Oh, you already used yours, Dave. No. Okay.
The other day.
The other day.
The other Dave.
Hawaii Dave.
Hawaii Dave. I think it's important that, like you said, we think about our CGs, but the other commander that's involved here is the garrison commander.
Yep.
And since overwhelming majority of these people are on his TDA, I know my garrison commander personally, has been saying, how do I get a vote in this? Where's my vote in this? And so I don't know how we're gonna, I mean, obviously, if we take this action, we have to sell that. We're selling it to multiple commanders, and how we do it, I think is important, and we could use some help with that in the MOA and policy part.
Excellent, thank you. This is the reason relationships are key. How much force structure does the chief of chaplains own? There is, I guess you could say he owns Oach. He doesn't own the chaplain detachments. That's still, although he's the proponent for that structure, that's owned by Compo 2 and 3. And of all the rest, he owns none. However, he's responsible for everything. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for your inputs. We've got them written down, and I'm hoping we'll be moving ahead in this in the coming months, and we'll report back. Thank you. Jeff Lawrence.
We're going to transition now to SE number 4, the recruiting initiative. I think the next thing up in your packet was the user update. That has been punted to a future council due to a family emergency with Chaplain Mallard. So please keep him and his family in your prayers. So we're going to transition to the recruiting initiatives update with Chaplain Meeker. We're going to roll, man. We're going to break schedule.
We all took a break in place as you came to the microphone.
And I appreciate that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now on to a fun topic. Let's go out and recruit the next generation. So I've been out to USREC the last couple of weeks out to Fort Knox and sat in on some briefings of what Big Army is doing. Big Army is going to recruit this year approximately 80,000 of young Americans to come to the United States Army and serve in the 140 countries that we are deployed and mobilized around the world. That's a big number. It's about 68,000 in the active duty, 15,000 in the reserve, and about 20,000 for the National Guard, which doesn't add up to 80,000, but but a math problem is kind of at the heart of some of our recruiting woes and the shortfalls that we're feeling out in the field. So more on that later. But as the Big Army is looking at recruiting 80,000 young Americans between the ages of 17 to 24, do you know how the percentage of young Americans are actually eligible to enlist in the United States Army? Any guesses?
15.
29%. 29%. And the two top reasons that exclude young Americans from enlisting in the Army are obesity and criminal records. So that leaves about 29% of young Americans that can serve. And right now, in today's economy, thank God, we're doing really well. Unemployment rate is under 4%, 3.8% unemployment rate in the United States. So extremely good. But it makes it very difficult for U.S. Army Recruiting Command to go out and try to find 80,000 young Americans. And even among those who are eligible to enlist, we find that there's a low propensity to serve. And so the United States Army is going out to 22 cities across the United States to try to tell young Americans a story about serving in the Army. So they have a big mission, a lot of pressure on USREC. They're really feeling the pressure because last year they didn't make mission, and in the recruiting world, that's everything. Either make mission or you fail, and it's a lot of pressure. So they're feeling the heat of that right now. And is Chaplain Palmer, did he step out? Yes. Our trade-off commander. How many are we short, chaplains and chaplain 56 mics in USREC? you know, Sergeant Major? We're short though, right? We have vacancies in USAREC. And it's going to become paramount this year as those recruiters who are recruiting out in very isolated spots across our country, trying to make this really mission impossible. They're going to be looking for their chaplains and their religious affairs specialists. But we're short. We're short. We're projected in active duty to be short by 70 chaplain captains this summer. That's almost 3 divisions worth of battalion chaplains that we're not going to have serving soldiers and their families by this summer. So our vacancies are out there. And what's the most common question that the chief is asked by commanders?
Where's my chaplain?
Where's my chaplain? Why my chaplain? And so our mission this year for chaplain recruiting, total Army, active guard and reserve, is 434. A much smaller number than 80,000, right? But that number, as we look at the demographic of eligible clergy, is a pretty difficult demographic. So you look at calling, you look at age, you look at fitness, or the lack thereof, you look at education, professional work experience, and propensity to serve, and we're looking at a very small demographic in which to recruit that next generation of chaplains. So mission impossible, it seems like. And even that number isn't really the accurate recruiting number. We really need more like 600 to actually fill our shortfalls. So I've gone back and I've asked chaplains served many years ago, hey, did you have shortages in the chaplain corps? They all say decades, going back decades, that they've all experienced shortages. Everyone in this room experiences shortages, shortfalls. And so I really think it comes down to a math problem because we don't know what we need until we know what we're losing, right? So in order to know what we need to gain, we need to know our losses. And so our strength management has really become the focus of where we need to, as the Office of Chief of Chaplains, in which it is our responsibility to figure that number out. It's our responsibility to figure out what it is that we need to recruit for. Because the U.S. Army Recruiting Command, they have met missions. They have met the chaplain recruiting mission year after year. And so the Army looks at us and says, well, what's the problem, Chaplain Corps? We've met mission. We're one of the few good news stories in USAREC. They always say chaplains meet their mission. And yet we have all these shortfalls. The National Guard is going to go under 80% strength this summer. Where's our Guard? That's a significant shortfall. Almost every year the mission is 60-40, 60-40 for Guard chaplains and chaplain candidates. They were short 24 chaplains in the recruiting mission last year. Our full-time recruiters in USAREC do not recruit for National Guard. Actually, they recruit from National Guard for active duty. While that works out great for the active duty, we get about 10 or 20 from the Guard. Nothing's going back into the Guard. And so I'm not very good with numbers, but that's not working out very well for our total Army Chaplain Corps. Because the whole pipeline needs to be flowing. Our chaplain candidate program needs to be strong in the Guard and the Reserve, which flows into our Guard and Reserve chaplains, which flows into active duty. And ideally, active duty then flows back into Reserve and Guard. If any one of those dries up, it affects us all. So one affects all affects each. Amen? So very difficult mission that we've got this year. And the first thing is that we need to figure out the math problem, which is at at the Office of Chief of Chaplains at the Department of Army. Because the recruiting mission is under USAREC. They are mission to recruit. And we do have our full-time recruiters there, which are being led by chaplains? No, it's being led by the medical. And so it's another thing we're trying to do for the future is take ownership, take leadership of our own chaplain recruiting. Debt of gratitude to our medical folks who have led this charge for us, but it is a unique mission. And chaplains and our chaplain corps family, our NCOs, even our family members, we know where to look. Our DREs, our volunteers, our chapel congregations, our endorsers, we know where to look for that next generation of chaplains. So one of our initiatives is the every chaplain and every member of the chaplain corps a recruiter to enable our entire branch to be out recruiting. And we believe that this will result in two things. One, more applications for the chaplain corps, and two, a higher quality. Our medical recruiting brigade, while they have asked us to reduce the mission every year to make what they think they can make, which continues to put us in a hole, they only recruit up to the mission. They don't recruit beyond that. So even now, our mission, our active duty mission, is 134 active duty chaplains for this year. It's packets. We've missioned for packets to come before a board, where we really need over 200 packets to come before a board so we can get closer to the accessions that we need. Again, I'm not a mathematician, but I know that this is a math problem. So if we can get every chaplain and every member of the chaplain corps recruiting for our branch, then we can get better quality and more applications. We've sent some folks out already. Chaplain Bird from Arsent did an amazing engagement with his team and his alma mater. We have the funds, we have tools, we have tips. We can send you and your teams, except the guard, out to do this recruiting for the branch. And so it's a difficult mission, but I'm glad it's difficult because it will show more the power of God and who we get our mission from. With God, all things are possible. I believe that. And even though this is a small demographic in which we're drawing from and recruiting from, I believe that God is still calling men and women to this ministry today. It's time to do your legacy, right? It's time to find your replacement. It's time to do the finders keepers. Go out and recruit for your own shortfalls. We are looking at ways to expedite and get in some more chaplain sessions this year by maybe even doing a paper packet, going old school, doing a little retro, so we can bring in a few more chaplains. So we absolutely need your help. And you might say, Karen, how can we help? One is, we have it in your packet, the new website where we have the tools, the resources, the training, the information on how to apply for the TDY